enemy casualties are unknown. But you've seen how it really was. Heroism, danger, fear, all rolled into one. Words don't describe it.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the 10 deadliest wars in history.
Communist forces attacked the Republic of Korea. This attack has made it clear beyond all doubt that the international communist movement is willing to use armed invasion to conquer independent nations.
For this list, we'll be listing the conflicts of the modern era that have seen the largest losses of human life. Which of these wars did you learn most about in school? Let us know in the comments. The Second Congo War. The Second Congo War is occasionally known under different titles, such as the Great African War or the Great War of Africa. But one unfortunate aspect of the conflict that remains a constant is the massive loss of life. After starting in 1998, around 9 countries were involved in the fighting. This means many soldiers and civilians suffered fatal consequences.
We spent 2 weeks in prison, then they took away the men. The men were rounded up, and we don't know where they are.
Over 350,000 people died within battle as a result of the Second Congo War. Additionally, a further 5 million lost their lives due to displacement, disease, or exposure. It's this second statistic that makes the Great African War one of the deadliest military conflicts since World War II.
We have no peace, no calm. How shall we develop under these circumstances?
The Russian Civil War. There were a lot of complex historical dominoes that fell into place that led to the Russian Civil War. And after it began, this 5-year conflict claimed many lives. The fighting took place between Russian Bolsheviks, the country's republic, and homegrown nationalists. Over 5 million deaths and casualties occurred after all was said and done. Some statistics even lend the Russian Civil War somewhere between 7 and 12 million total casualties. In the wake of all this devastation, the number of refugees reached into 6 digits, and a lack of vital resources made it hard for many civilians to get back on their feet. The 30 Years' War. Historians constantly debate and study the catalysts that eventually lead to such massive, wide-scale military conflicts, especially ones that significantly change socio-political landscapes. Today, the beginnings of the 30 Years' War are seen very differently than they once were. The conflict that claimed 4 to 8 million lives was initially seen as being about religious ideologies. But others see the war as a battle of wills and expansion between royal houses in Spain, Austria, and France. In the aftermath of the conflict, a few German cities claimed that anywhere between 5 and 27,000 of their individual residents had been lost. The Napoleonic Wars. Portugal, Russia, France, the UK, Spain, and more were all involved during the Napoleonic Wars.
Gentlemen, tomorrow at dawn we cross the Niemen into Russia. We'll talk of peace in Moscow.
During this period, Napoleon Bonaparte oversaw legendary military dominance in the wake of the French Revolution. Upwards of 7 million people lost their lives during this decade-long period of violence. But the damage didn't stop there. Infrastructure was affected, horses were stolen, and massive looting took place as the wars raged ever on. Napoleon's army even suffered one of its greatest losses during the general's disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812. In that conflict alone, it was estimated that 300,000 soldiers perished. The Chinese Civil War. Since no formal peace treaty has ever come to pass between the combatants of the Chinese Civil War, some experts state that this 1940s conflict hasn't technically ended.
The general message was for other countries to mind their own business.
The conflict came down to a battle between the Republic of China and People's Republic of China. Throughout the 21st century, they've each maintained legitimacy as national governments. Although a tenuous ceasefire has been in place since 1979, many casualties were recorded before that point. Over 11 million people died throughout the course of this multi-phase war that started back in 1927. There was even a point where fighting stopped to face the threat of World War II. However, the tense conflict resumed in the late 40s. Spanish conquest of the Inca. Spanish colonization wasn't limited to just the conquest of the Inca. The country also oversaw violent and deadly invasions of indigenous peoples from Mexico, Peru, Chile, and more. But it's the Spanish conquest of the Inca that was stated as being one of their most fatal conflicts. Before the fighting began, things weren't going well within the South American country. Not only were the residents battling disease, but a recent civil war left them fractured. Conquistadors took advantage of all of it and launched devastating attacks.
The Incas hadn't seen horses before, and these aren't ordinary horses, these are Spanish horses. Fierce, big, fighting horses.
By the end of the war, over 8 million indigenous Incans died from violent conflicts and epidemic disease. The Ming-Qing Transition. Also known as the Manchu invasion of China, the Ming-Qing transition took place over a 60-plus year period. This struggle mainly occurred between two of China's monarchical family dynasties, with the latter Qing dynasty serving as one of China's largest. The Ming dynasty started declining during the conflict due to diminished resources and overwhelming opposition. At the same time, the Qing dynasty continued to expand its power with political moves and bloody conflicts. A startling 25 million people died after the Ming-Qing transition was all said and done. 4 decades of fighting had taken an unimaginable toll on everyone involved. Taiping Rebellion. There are points of history where the number of deaths within a conflict is so large that the final statistics defy reason. The Taiping Rebellion was another period of civil war within Chinese history, this time dating back to the aforementioned Qing dynasty era. The Qing once again emerged victorious from a rebellion, but the cost of victory was extraordinarily high. The number of total dead after the Taiping Rebellion had concluded was somewhere between 20 and 30 million. And although the Qing dynasty won the conflict, it was still severely devastated by the Taiping Rebellion. World War I. Often referred to as the Great War, the events of World War I caused an astronomical loss of life. The conflict drew in a number of major world powers from across the globe fighting for their respective causes. During this dark period of world history, there were upwards of 68 million deaths over the course of just over 4 years of fighting. A number that high in such a relatively short time underlines just how grave this war was after its conclusion in 1918. The changes made to the worldwide socio-political landscape as a result of World War I cannot be overstated.
There are millions out there dying for their countries. And what good is it?
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into Settings and switch on your notifications. World War II. As the Axis powers continued a campaign of violence, an alliance between prominent military powers was formed to combat the expanding threat.
We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender!
Even though the war is often depicted in lots of media, it's still difficult for many to wrap their heads around World War II's real death toll. The casualties ranged from those lost in military battles to the victims of notorious war crimes. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki alone made up for over 200,000 of those who perished. After a series of large-scale invasions and battles, the conflict ended after 6 years. It's estimated that as many as 85 million people lost their lives due to World War II.